Good morning, class. Once again, welcome to our Los Angeles Chess Club intermediate class. This morning's teacher, once again, is National Master Ruben Ondangan. I would like to present this morning two games. The first one will be against PD Master Mark Duckworth. I'm White, and the title of this morning's lecture is To Err Is Human. Okay? So, all of us make mistakes in our chess game, and they come in bunches. Sometimes we play perfectly for a short period of time. Suddenly, something distracted us, right? You remember something, you saw something, you smell something. Those kind of things affect you. A beautiful woman passed by you, and it ruins your chess game. Is that right? So, here this morning, let's see what happened to FIDE Master Mark Duckworth. I hope he doesn't show up yet while I'm giving this lecture. So let's go. I was white. I started with e4, and he played the French defense, French connection. And a lot of you know that I always play the two knights, knight f3, and after d5. And this game was played in the LA Masters. That was the name of the tournament before, back in February 15 of 2014. After d5, I play knight c3. A very quiet, tame line against the French. And this type of system played by white. Not too many strong advocates for this line, except that it's probably found at the end of a book about the French. So a lot of French players will just read the first three chapters: advanced, the win hour, and the classical. That's it. They never go to the area or the chapter that says odds and ends. So okay, knight c3, knight f6 was played. And if you're white here, what should you play?
Can you play e5?
e5 has to be played. Gain tempo, gain time. Gain space. Knight fd7 was played. And another game, he withdrew to knight b8. And that game ended also a win for me. But that will probably another time I'll show it. An expert here, Jaglum, what's his last name? An older man.
Yeah.
Is a very strong player for his
Michael.
Mike Jaglum.
Yeah.
Plays knight e4 against me, and it was interesting because after knight e4, white's best reply, according to me at least,
Take it double the pawn.
take it double the pawn, and the knight will find no place to
Well, you can
go.
back to g.
Right? And so here I borrowed an idea from the Alekhine defense, where I played knight e2, and Michael Jaglum played bishop c5, threatening mate in one. And I said, this old man is really something.
So d4.
So I have to play d4, and after a series of moves, and we find ourselves, this knight will be it's quite strong there for a while. Okay, so it's a playable line for black. So I'm showing you a possibility. I believe this is good for black. Don't you think so?
Yeah.
Two pieces are active.
But he's moved two pieces twice in the opening.
But he has some sort of attack going on. It's very confusing if you have no clear idea on how to proceed in this line. So let's go back to what happened in the very interesting line, knight e4. So I have to borrow an idea from the Alekhine. So natural knight d7 seems okay here, and after d4,
c5.
of course c5. Now, and my trade, the book will recommend here bishop f4. That is the book recommendation on the French.
What about knight to e2?
And that's why when I played knight e2, I unnecessarily blocked the bishop too
But
early.
it allows you to play c3 and then keep the pawn structure intact.
If I was planning to play the French advance, which has the c3, I might as well play it on immediately on the main line for 3 moves without playing knight c3. The idea why I played the 2 knights is to avoid mainstream theory from black, where they can play the win hour, they can play the classical, and so bring the game out of the book early in the game. And it has some surprise value in the game, and the opponent normally gets affected by such ideas and concepts.
Does it pay to move the bishop to g5?
That's my next move, bishop g5. So if the bishop f4 was recommended by the book, why bishop g5 is not recommended? There are several reasons why, because it says that after bishop g5, the attack on the queen actually helps black. But, you know, it's not easy. For example, here, queen b6 is what we analyzed in a previous episode on this lecture. But here, Mark Duckworth played the pinning move, queen a5. So the knight cannot move. And so here, what should I play as white? Let's take a look a short while and evaluate the position. This is a dream position for a French player, by the way. Every French player will love this position for black.
Bring the bishop back to d2.
The coordination of the knight, c6 and d7, hitting on e5 or d4 is very well placed, you know, it's properly posted and things like that. And so here, I played a move that will probably close to losing. So, to Err Is Human is the title of our.
Take the pawn.
I took the pawn, and probably not the best because
He allows
it allows development for free for black, and not to mention he doesn't have to capture immediately, because now there are two targets: the c5, which it can be captured easily in any way, queen, knight, bishop. But then, you know, Mark Duckworth, who is a PD master about 2300, decided to develop a piece and target a fresh piece, a pawn on the board, and that is the e5 pawn. And so here, there are two attackers with one defender. It becomes very problematic suddenly for white. Okay, so and I have to catch up with development. My ideal position will be castle and rook here, bolstering this e5 pawn. However, that requires two tempo on my part.
What about protecting c5?
Protecting the c5 with bishop e3 will move the same piece twice, and this must be a reason why the books consider this not very strong, because what is your bishop doing there? Into nowhere, right? And that square is not hitting anyone, and you allow your opponent to gain tempo, space, well positioning on the other side of the board. So here I said I really have to castle here. The pin will become a problem soon. And so I created a pin on. Therefore, indirectly, you notice the indirect depends of the pawn on e5, because he cannot capture it. You will capture, and the knight is pinned. So in protecting a pawn or a piece, there's two ways: direct or indirect way. Here is an indirect method of protecting the pawn. So after bishop b5, he took the pawn with the bishop, developing furthermore. And of course, evaluating this, it is already better for black, at least according to the computer. But like what I say, we're humans, and so the element of mistake on each part will actually affect the game itself. So after bishop b5 and bishop takes c5, castle, castle as well. Now after black castle here, class, you have to notice that the bishop is actually there's no longer any pin involved here. And so what should we do?
Move it.
Either move it, or remember, when we move the bishop, this really become a threat. Knight takes pawn.
So take the knight.
So we have no choice but to surrender the bishop pair early in the game. So bishop takes c6, force. B takes c6. And so here, a dream position for French player on the black side. Here, the reason is the capture towards the center strengthen his central control. The e5 is a target, all right? And the knight here lacks any mobility. Can go probably e2, but it requires time. This bishop and queen combo here are very strong, not to mention the fresh b pile that black can occupy. So I feel uneasy in my position so early in the game. What should we play here?
A3.
Very good. At least create a threat. A3. The idea is play b4, forking the bishop and the queen. Elements of combination, pins, forks.
Also moving the rook to E1.
Rook to e1 is also playable, except that this pawn might become undependent. For example, maybe queen b6, attack here, and attack on the b2
And
pawn.
the bishop.
It could be it might be a problem. So, as said, that's my idea. I want to play the rook here, but I have to prevent the idea of queen b6. So I have to prepare rook e1. So after a3, queen c7 was played, adding further attack on the e5 pawn. So here, how should you defend?
Now
The automatic reply is rook e1. Am I right?
that's right.
Is there any other way?
Yes.
Queen E2. Queen E2.
Queen e2 is another one.
Bishop F4.
Bishop f4 is another. Bishop f4 could probably a problem because of f6. The bishop might be in free. The opening of the f file, the opening of this, you can see the glaring weakness on e5. So here, before you defend, see if you can attack. B4, very good, Jonathan. All right. B4 attacks the bishop. It can't go here because there's a bishop. It can't go to d6 because of the pawn. So these are force. It can only go to one square. Bishop b6. And so that removes the b pile for his rook, and that is good for us. Okay? And it strengthens the position of the bishop on g5 because now nobody challenged him on the e7 square if he decided to go there.
That's not a bad square.
And knight
Right.
C4.
And knight A4 too.
Right.
Knight a4 will be probably. So here you see now the withdrawal of bishop to b6 gave us this possibility.
I like bishop E7.
Bishop e7 attacking the rook. So here, class, knowing PD Master Mark Duckworth, who likes active position even at the cost of exchange sacrifices, my idea is bishop d6, and that bishop might become a real thorn in his position. It might be a problem. And so instead of moving the rook out of the sphere of influence of that bishop, he decided to sacrifice it and gain a pawn for it. So he captured knight takes pawn.
I like that.
And the computer said it's good move. Right? And we have no choice. Capture, bishop takes. Now he can capture with check, or here he decided to capture with the king first and leave the knight there. Now this combo of the knight, bishop, and queen could create problem, and the arrival of the bishop here looks very well coordinated. You see, if you try to visualize it, it's very good for black. The two bishops are well posted here. There's only one problem. The king was on f8, and at the back of his head, he's probably thinking that the king is still in g8 here. Because after bishop takes f8, king takes f8, I played Paris move, knight a4. At least we have to neutralize the strength of that bishop on b6, because it's quiet in there, but it's actually exerting so much influence on f2. Alright? So knight takes knight with check. How should you recapture? Of course, queen capture. And here, you will notice that PD Master Mark Duckworth always create counterplay or attack every time instead of withdrawing. And anyway, there's no other way for the bishop to go anywhere.
Bishop D4.
Bishop d4 is playable. For example, if that's what he played, bishop d4, but it gives you
A tempo for the rook. I guess.
tempo for the bishop with either c3 or Which one? Between a pawn and a piece?
Piece
A rule of thumb, the piece. Which rook? Of course, this is the one under attack. So, rook a d1. So, it gives us a tempo on the bishop. The bishop went to e5. Regains the tempo because he's attacking the h2.
Why not pawn to e5 to protect the bishop and advance the pawns?
e5 might be problematic after c3, and suddenly the loosening of his central pawn, then it goes back to b4. That is what he's avoiding to exchange. Remember, the knight is on the edge of the board.
So you want to
He wants to keep my knight at the edge, and I have to waste a tempo myself to.
Are you nervous? But you're nervous.
Yeah. So here we play bishop e5, regaining the tempo he lost by attacking the h2, which I have to defend. Now there's two ways to defend here. It's a matter of choice. It's either h3 or g3.
But g3 weakens the white squares, and he's got a white squared bishop.
Very good point, Mitch. You remember here, Mitch, if you play g3 here, stopping the spear of the bishop's influence there on the dark square, you created a different weakness, this time on the light square. Now, that bishop may not be visible at the moment, but when these two pawns start moving up, that bishop will suddenly rule the high and we cannot challenge it. There's no way. We have no bishop with the same color. And so, therefore, the only correct move here, h3. Okay? So, after h3, he played bishop a6. Okay, the bishop, for the moment, he's up a pawn. Right? But we are up material.
I like knight c5, threatening to win the queen.
Knight c5 attacks the bishop.
And the pawn at e6, because the pawn at f7 is pinned.
Now here is the title of this morning is To Err Is Human, because here
Oh, bishop h1, h2.
Mark captured this rook.
Yeah,
What?
and I could.
Yes.
Bishop h2, right?
But he didn't do it. He took the rook instead.
And then,
Took-
but won't the king go?
But the king just takes the bishop.
The king just go here
Or takes the bishop. The king can take the bishop.
or take the bishop.
So
Why
knight
doesn't-
takes e6, check.
Wait, why doesn't the knight go straight e6?
That's my next move, and it's over.
Yeah, because he just missed the pin. He just missed the pin.
He just missed the pin because he said afterwards that the back of his head, the king is still on
I
g8.
know, that happens all the time.
It happens a lot of time. Now, it can happen to master. It's possible that it could happen to ordinary players like you and I. Okay, and this guy is 2300. How did he miss that? Because your mind play tricks sometimes. Okay?
Where did you see it? How long ago before this?
Well, I said that after knight c5, it's very tempting to capture with automatically, right? Mechanical capture here and thinking that there's no threat, because he thought that his king was still on g8.
Sure.
He forgot that he captured the bishop earlier, and so automatic without even looking at the board. And avoid that in your chess. Every move is a fresh position. Okay. So you have to always look at the position, play the position and not the man. Discipline. The only move here is to swallow your pride and go back to c8. That's the only move in the position, nothing else. Okay? And after that, of course, the knight, which was at the edge of the board earlier, now have a strong outpost on c5. And at least here, we could have a clean advantage. For example, rook e1, and then after queen h5 later on, we have a double attack on h7 on and e5. Okay, and this is Speedy Master Mark Duckworth. So we have time to go to the second game. Yay!
Very nice.
Very good. So.
One little pin.